everybody, this is Captain Brett with the Marine Minute. We are here on the Trinidad River, and I'm happy to introduce to you Officer First Class Helwig from the Department of Natural Resources Police. Officer Helwig, thanks for letting us ride along with you today.
Absolutely.
Tell us about how'd you get your start with the Maryland Department of Natural Resources Police?
Well, I grew up outdoors. My dad was always big on taking us out in the woods, whether it was hiking or hunting or just being out. I grew up fishing, and the outdoors have always been kind of like my happy place. So, you know, if I could have a job where I could work in that, it's a no-brainer. I've always been interested in law enforcement, and so this just kind of felt like a natural fit when they opened up and I applied, and I was lucky enough to make it, and here I am almost 4 years later and still love it.
Fantastic. So your primary role is being on a patrol boat, correct? I mean, you're on land too, or mostly on the water, or tell us about that.
Yep, so we do it all in the Department of Natural Resources Police. We're, in the hunting season, we're on land checking the hunters in the woods, or on the water if they're waterfowl hunting, and then in the summertime, our primary function is boating enforcement. So that's the recreational boating, the commercial fisheries out here. So we've got all these, all the guys crabbing out here, commercially and recreationally, and then just making sure everyone's having a safe time and having fun out here on the water.
Fantastic. You can tell us, our audience, what some of the misconceptions are that you think people hear or know or think about the DNR.
I think the biggest one, probably that I hear a lot about here, is that we're always out to get you, right? So we always want to get out there. We're just going to rip through your stuff, and we're going to write you a bunch of tickets. To me, I think that's the biggest misconception, because a lot of the officers that work here, like, our biggest concern is just safety. So if we can correct a safety issue before an accident happens, that's a win. And then education, right? So it's not always about writing a ticket or a warning. A lot of the times, it's just educating the public. So there's boating is a very, very complex activity, so a lot of people do miss certain parts, regulations here and there, so it's always good to get out and just more or less educate.
Now, regarding boating safety, what do you see as a DNR officer? What are if you could pick, the top 3 things that you see that either are going to lead to an accident or have been the result of an accident?
Well, alcohol is a big one. So alcohol and boats definitely do not mix if you're going to be operating the vessel. Another one would be improper lookout. So it's the same as on a road. We don't want to be on our phones or preoccupied while running a boat, because it's there's a lot of variables out here. There's other boats, right? There's no really set lanes, so there's no like lines on the road. We're on the open water. So always keeping a proper lookout. And then another big one is life jackets. So always having enough life jackets so you can have one per person on your boat. And then if you can and feel inclined to do so, is wearing your life jackets. So these things are huge lifesavers if you go on the water. So.
Officer Helwig, can you tell us about, for Maryland State boat regulations, for the people that don't know, what is required on a boat?
So,
safety-wise.
All right, yeah, so every boat out here, you got to have life jackets, right? So one life jacket per person, and that counts for canoes, kayaks, and paddleboards as well. So that's something we run into a lot of, is people on paddleboards that don't have them, so make sure you have some kind of life jacket. So that's one life jacket per person. If it's a vessel longer than 16 feet, you're going to need a Type 4 throwable, so like the seat cushion or a ring. Sound producing device, so a horn, bell, or a whistle. You're going to need a fire extinguisher. And if you plan on being out at night or in a waterway wider than 2 miles, you got to have flares. So with flares, you want to make sure they're not expired. And then with all this safety equipment, you want to make sure it's readily accessible. So something you want to keep in mind is like with life jackets, right? You don't want to bury your life jackets in the hatch. You want to keep those right on top, because it's like a fire extinguisher. When you need it, you need it. It's an emergency. As far as like your inboards, you want to make sure you've got your backfire flame arresters on there. Then just make sure all that's in working condition, and make sure it's accessible, and you check that every time you go out, because you don't want to run into an emergency on the water and not have any of that.
Okay, great. How about for personal watercrafts, jet skis?
Yep, so on PWCs, you want to make sure that everybody on the PWC riding it is wearing a life jacket. The operator has their kill switch on. So those are the two main ones right there. And then another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that if you're going to pull a tube with a jet ski, you want to make sure the jet ski has enough seats for however many people you're going to pull on the tube. So it's got to be a minimum of at least 3-seater to pull a tube, because you think one person on the tube, a rear-facing observer, and then the operator.
Officer Helwig, tell us about your favorite part of the job and your least favorite part of the job.
I don't have too many least favorites, but I'd say my favorite part of the job is the diversity. Of, you know, getting up every day and there always being something new to go do. You know, new people to meet. Getting to meet all the different people that you do. You know, I mean people from all around the world out here that, you know, either come in on sailboats or yachts, or they're visiting, and just strike up a conversation, and, you know, if they have any questions, answer any of their questions, and then move on to the next one. And then, you know, with our job, we're lucky enough that, you know, most of it is seasonal. So by the time, you know, you get working on something like, say, crabbing, you know, by the time you're tired of checking crabs and getting pinched by crabs, so it's time to measure oysters as oyster season's in, and then vice versa. So it's, you know, the seasons are always changing. There's always new stuff for us to do. I guess is a way to put it. And just, I would say you never really get bored here. Actually, in 2018, we just celebrated our 150th anniversary. We were actually founded in 1868, just after the Civil War. So what happened was, after the Civil War, you had all these people fighting over the resources in the bay because, you know, they heard how much money could be made on these oysters. So you had a period of time called the Oyster Wars in the 1860s, like right after the Civil War. So to combat that, Maryland created the State Oyster Police. So that was kind of, you know, how we got our start, and it was just a bunch of war vets on sailboats with cannons, and they would just go around and, you know, try and keep peace on the bay. Over the years, that kind of evolved. They kind of broke it up in, you know, so where you were a marine police or you were a game warden working inland. And then I want to say in 2004, we absorbed all the law enforcement park rangers in the state. So the law enforcement park rangers came over. I think it was 2003 or 2004. So we kind of absorbed them, and they became NRP officers. And then we just forget what year we combined the two, the inland and marine. They combined those two and then created the natural resources police, and that's what we have today. So we do it all, everything from boating to hunting, inland, marine, you name it. We kind of do it all, as well as traditional law enforcement. So it's a really cool agency with really cool history. I'm a big history nerd, so that was, you know, one of the benefits, I guess, was to learn all that, because, you know, back in the, I want to say, early 1900s, our patrol boats had machine guns on them. So we actually had two. I don't think they were Vickers. I forget what machine guns they were, but we actually had two belt-fed machine guns on patrol boats, because that's how crazy it was on the water back then. And then, you know, back during the Oyster Wars, we actually had, I want to say they were howitzer cannons mounted on our boats, and they would shoot grape shot at the skipjacks to break their sails so they could actually catch them. So it's just cool stuff like that. And then, you know, 154 years later, here we are. So I love it. I wouldn't want to work anywhere else.
Officer Helwig, pleasure being with you today.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on the Marine Minute. We enjoyed being with you and learning all about the Department of Natural Resources Police. It's something I've wanted to do for a really long time.
Absolutely. Glad to have you.
Have a great day, and appreciate your support of the Marine Minute.
Absolutely. Thank you.
The Marine Minute, www.themarineminute.com.
Thanks for watching.